Imagine you were in a fight with a giant creature who's about to attack you. As it winds up to hit you, suddenly your friend comes flying in to save you. There's probably buildup and tension in that scene, and when it's done, the release of that buildup and tension is pretty sweet. That's how defensive assists feel. But what about evasive assists? How do they feel? Howdy, my name's Yojimbo Blade, and welcome to ZZZ Oddities, where I discuss some of the odd things in Zenless Zone Zero that I think are fascinating topics. Today, I'm here to talk about evasive assists. Some of you watching this probably already have your own opinion on evasive assists, and let's be honest, you probably think they're bad, and I'm not going to try to change that opinion. I'm only here to offer my perspective on it. It's a bit hard to explain, so let's start from the beginning. Let's go over some terms. A perfect assist happens when you press the assist button whenever the enemy attacks with a yellow flash attack. And there are two types of perfect assists, defensive and evasive. Pressing the basic button after any perfect assist will give you an assist follow-up attack, unless the enemy is doing a multi-hit move that is too quick to counter, or a control skill, which is another term we don't need to worry about just yet. Some attacks can only be countered by defensive assists, and some can only be countered by evasive assists. Usually defensive assists counter only melee attacks, and evasive assists can counter both melee and ranged attacks, so they have a lot more variety. Which makes sense when you realize that the agents who have evasive assists don't really have melee weapons, they all use ranged weapons. Well, no, that's not quite true, because Trigger and Orphe literally shoot enemies, but Trigger has a giant rifle and Orphe has a giant mecha tail, so I guess that counts. And I guess Nicole shoots people, but she has a techno briefcase. I guess that's good enough for a defensive assist. And Astra, well, she shoots lasers or something, so that's why she has an evasive assist. But Lucia also shoots lasers. She has a defensive assist. And that's not even mentioning Remiel, who... Okay, I'll address all that stuff later. If you were wondering why agents like Pulchra Arena appeared even though you didn't want to use their perfect assists, it's because the move you were trying to perfect assist could not be countered by a defensive assist. As of version 3.1, all perfect assists have the gold flash. It's really hard to tell in the middle of combat which attacks are the ranged attacks and which attacks are the melee attacks. And even then, some of the melee attacks that you can defensive assist look a lot like ranged attacks. So as of version 3.1, even though you didn't want an evasive assist, you press the button, so that's what you get. We will get back to this much later. And finally, defensive assists usually deal more days, while evasive assists activate the vital view for a few seconds. That just means all enemies slow down and you're invincible for a little bit. The other thing to note about defensive assists is that sometimes when you do an action against an enemy, you will interrupt them while they are doing a move you could defensive assist. If you've ever had a player jump out and try to block nothing, that's probably what's causing this. You sent them out, now they're just kind of sitting still and not doing anything. That's pretty frustrating. Evasive assists don't ever have this problem. Now, sometimes their attacks will miss because the enemy is doing something really weird, but the game has slowed down and you're completely invincible, so you can kind of do whatever you want. Defensive assist agents stop time, everything slows down, and then they're stuck in place. They can't do anything. And now, unfortunately, I have to interrupt this video for a sponsored ad read. I know, it's annoying. I'll try to get through it quickly. Shut up and get on with the video. Oh, well, okay then. This message was brought to you by my sponsors. Now back to the video. With all of that out of the way, here's the question to kickstart this discussion. What is the point of perfect assists? And I don't just mean from a player perspective. Put yourself in the shoes of the developers. Imagine trying to create an action combat RPG for the masses. What does an action combat game need to be exciting and thrilling? It's pretty self-explanatory. It needs action and combat. And designing for action as a genre is pretty interesting. If you've watched action movies, you've probably noticed that no matter what type of action movie it is, the character in the scene is doing a lot of cool stuff, or at least it's presented as if it's cool. But there's way more to it than just that. After all, it's not enough to just have a character do cool things. You also want to give the audience a reason to believe it's cool. What better way to do that than giving them an opposing force? Which is why many action scenes usually involve some type of antagonist, trying to stop the character who's doing the cool stuff. It's this push and pull of opposed forces that set the scene for iconic moments. That tension, that struggle, is a necessary ingredient to take action to the next dramatic level. I could go further, but I'll stop there. So let's get back to the original question. What is the point of perfect assists? Perfect assists are designed to create moments of friction between players and enemies, and through this struggle, that inherent friction feels even more exciting. If you are an inexperienced player and you see a yellow flash, you have been conditioned by the game to respond to it with perfect assists. In fact, many times, bosses will now do these moves multiple times back to back, and that can cause some panic in players. But by using perfect assists, which is only one button, you can stop all of these attacks, and suddenly that panic turns into adrenaline as you launch a counterattack. This is probably the design flavor for why early defense agents like Ben and Seth give more assist points when they use their ultimates. Context for 1.0 Zenless: decibels were shared by the team, so if one agent used their ultimate, everyone's decibels went back to 0. So if you used their ultimate, yes, you were dealing less damage, but the utility was that you were a lot safer because you had way more assist points to spend. I'm willing to bet the devs concluded that this part of the game was too good to leave locked behind a class. Not that it was locked behind the class, but I remember a lot of times, especially in Season 1, when I was fighting a boss and I would just run out of assist points. And when that happens, the game just feels a lot less thrilling to play. You can still dodge counter everything, but that's not as exciting as a perfect assist. And I'm willing to bet this is the reason why many new enemies have moves that also give players infinite assist points. They want to put players in that position more frequently because, again, those moments, those interactions are way more exciting. Sound design also plays a big factor in this. The clash of two opposing forces really sets in the mind of the player that this is a big moment. I know this was quite a preamble, but now we are ready. Everything I've said was necessary because now, finally, let's talk about evasive assists. I think you will quickly understand the actual problem with them. The whole push and pull game design, the struggle between players and enemies, the build-up, the tension, the excitement, the panic. Evasive assists don't do any of that. Well, maybe they do some of it, but it's simply not present like it is for defensive assists. This is why I find this topic really interesting. If I were to quiz most of you for why you thought evasive assists were bad, you'd probably say something like, well, bosses are designed to reward defensive assists, so naturally having evasive assists is just worse, and that's annoying. And while that's not wrong, I don't believe that's a complete picture, because obviously, the question after that is, well, why would bosses reward defensive assists? I mean, it's not a move that's hard to do, it's not physically or mentally demanding, it doesn't require much of the player. As long as you can see a gold flash and press one button, you can do it. So why would bosses need to reward defensive assists? I think the best answer is that the devs recognize defensive assists are really exciting in a way that evasive assists simply aren't, and that gives them more opportunities to design certain encounters. And here's the actual secret. Here's the real reason why defensive assists are better than evasive assists. Defensive assists take control away from the player. They empower bosses to deal big, powerful, fast attacks that depower the player. It puts them in a position where they can put up some resistance, but without giving them control over the pace of the fight. Evasive assists empower players to ignore everything that the boss is doing and take back control immediately. And that's the big kicker. Defensive assists make enemies control the pace of combat. The tempo of combat shifts into the hands of the enemy, while evasive assists makes players control the pace of combat. The tempo of combat shifts into the hands of the player. Now, I will get to some nuances, but I believe this is the main difference in terms of gameplay. To demonstrate what I mean, let's look at this example. Here, I'm fighting the Defiler with Billy, Piper, and Lucy. When the Defiler does her Beyblade move, we can see that it lasts for a long time, and no matter what I do, Piper and Lucy cannot escape or counterattack. They have to wait until the very end. When the Defiler does this move, it has complete control over the player if they have defensive assists. The only way to not be caught in this is to dodge counter every one, but most players don't do this. Now, let's take Lucy out of the team and try this again. For some reason, when the Defiler does this move, your next perfect assist is automatically a defensive assist, regardless of your team order. So now that Lucy's gone, here's how Piper and Billy interact with it. If you are observant, you will notice that this Beyblade move is completely helpless against Billy's Evasive Assist. Billy immediately counters it, and then does whatever he wants. This will be the same if you play Juliet. And I'm not that great at math, but a bunch of Evasive Assist follow-up attacks, EXs, dash attacks, what have you, do a lot more damage than just one defensive assist follow-up attack. That tension, that push and pull in combat, completely goes away. This move from the Defiler, which puts the boss in complete control over the player, now becomes a move that gives the player complete control over the Defiler, and that's a lot less exciting. That's not to say that it's necessarily bad. After all, giving the player control is fun. But if the point of an enemy move is to put the player in a helpless and powerless position, and to give them that excitement when they're able to counter it, it really doesn't work if the player can just ignore it entirely. This is why I don't believe they can just fix this issue by releasing a bunch of Evasive Assist agents. I mean, they absolutely could do that as like a design flavor for a few months, but they might choose not to. Because, simply put, good Evasive Assists give too much control into the hands of players. When you watch good Billy and Julian players, you will see them use these moves very intentionally. It's not a coincidence, they use these moves on purpose. And the devs don't want them to do that, especially when they've been putting time and effort to make enemies imposing, and then you just let the players completely ignore that. After all, I haven't really focused on this, they slow down time, they make you fully invincible. They negate half the game by completely ignoring whatever the enemy is doing. They don't want to design agents who just ignore everything that enemies do. First off, that would make the game far more boring. And second, it would fundamentally change how the player engages with the game. I mean, after all, why would players ever bother to interact with enemies when they can just ignore everything that the enemy is doing? This is Shunguang. Everyone say, "Hello, Shunguang." When Shunguang is in her enlightened state, she is practically invincible, and in her ideal teams, she is pretty much always in this state for the vast majority of fights, which is why whenever you see a decent Shunguang player, you will notice that they rarely perfect assists. And I mean, why would they? Why would a player intentionally choose to relinquish control and the pace of the fight into the hands of the enemy, when instead, they don't ever have to do that? They could keep all the tempo for themselves the entire time, and there are no drawbacks. So in my opinion, Shunguang is a good agent. She's really good. In fact, she might be too good. And as a result, I think she is poorly designed for the action combat of Zenless Zone Zero. In the same way, right now, based on how the game is designed, Evasive Assists are good. They are really good. In fact, they are too good. And as a result, they are poorly designed for the action combat of Zenless Zone Zero. This could all change if they suddenly start designing encounters around Evasive Assists. That would be different. That would be kind of interesting, but they really haven't done it yet. By the way, Shunguang is not the only one who does this, but that type of gameplay is most noticeable on her. So to counteract this overbalance of player power, the devs gave enemies a brand new move called Control Skills. Releasing the same time as Shunguang, these control skills quite literally take control away from the player and forces them to be reactive. No longer can you just do whatever you want, you gotta stop everything you're doing to counter these attacks. This is a pretty heavy-handed solution, but I guess it works. By the way, if your only experience with these control skills is in Deadly Assault, this move is typically the first thing the boss will do, probably to make it easier for players, and they usually tie it to performance points anyway, so that's convenient. When you go into the real challenge modes, like in the Battle Tower, the bosses will wait to do them, and I think it's based on their HP. So they usually do it somewhere near the halfway point of the fight, and in that context, these control skills are much more controlling. But the funny thing is recognizing the bosses who have these control skills. I mean, since Shunguang has released, control skills were given to the big bosses of each version. This includes Primordial Nightmare, Vesper, Sanguine Sweeper, Scorched Horizon, and recently, Gertablulu Stagnant Aberrant. I'll just call it Gertablulu 2, Electric Boogaloo. So now that you've seen them all on screen, I hope you realize something really strange. Shunguang only wants to fight one of these enemies. The first one, Primordial Nightmare. The rest of them are all anomaly bosses. So control skills were designed to punish Shunguang, and then they gave the move to only anomaly bosses, and now it's only punishing anomaly agents. Why? What the heck? I guess they knew Ramiel was going to be an anomaly agent, but come on! What did they do to deserve this? Now, in my experience, control skills are fine. Yes, they drastically slow down the pace of the fight, but I think that's good. I believe the other main reason they were designed is because of the pushback from bosses like Miasma Priest and the Defiler. Yes, perfect assists are fun. Doing them quickly in succession is exciting, but doing that constantly for the entire fight is not exciting. That becomes stale, dull, monotonous. Meanwhile, control skills intentionally slow down the pace of the fight. They force players to play at a different tempo before speeding back up, and they usually don't last for long at all. Instead of relying on, just frankly put, spamming defensive assists, I think this is a much better kind of back and forth action combat experience that the game is trying to go for. And since most bosses usually only have one control skill, they don't overstay their welcome. So overall, as of version 3.1, I think the control skills we have are pretty good. With all of that said, that concludes today's video. Thank you for watching This is Miss Claret. Everyone say, hello, Miss Claret. You know how I said we only have 2 types of perfect assist? I lied. For some reason, the devs decided to give Claret a move called a counter assist, not to be confused with an assist counter, which is a dodge counter into a perfect assist that uses 2 agents. What does Claret's counter assist do? Whenever the on-field character is about to be hit by a control skill, all you have to do is press the assist button, and then you will neutralize the enemy's control skill. This may be a skill that is only given to Claret, or it may be a skill that's given to every member of this new class. Oh joy. I'm pretty sure this means we're gonna have a boss that has like 5 different control skills that are just annoying. I guess you still have to react to the boss, and it does still have that struggle of control between the player and the enemy. So while I think it's unnecessary, I guess it's fine. And now I am finally done with this topic. This is Alexandrina. Everyone say, hello, Rena. I finished writing the script and was fully ready to record and upload this video. And then they suddenly announced some changes in the beta that I kinda need to talk about. Rena was buffed in version 3.1, so she's a lot better. And right now, she is perfectly designed for a new character named Claret, who has not been released yet, but is a brand new class of character, and Rena is perfectly designed to buff her. Unfortunately, because it's been so long since many people have bothered to play Rena, they are now realizing that when you have a defensive assist and an evasive assist agent on the team, every enemy attack will appear as a gold flash. Remember, evasive assist can counter everything, but defensive assist cannot. But the game does a really bad job of communicating to players the difference between those 2 types of attacks. And I am willing to bet the beta playtesters are also giving them the feedback that is telling them, we can't stand using Rena with this character. Rena will keep appearing when we don't want her to. The game keeps tricking us to use a perfect assist, and when we want to use a defensive assist, out pops Rena evasive assist. And that's really frustrating. Completely understandable. So, from what I've been told, the devs have decided to remove yellow flashes for all evasive assist only attacks. Because after all, unless it's some very specific boss move, they can already counter pretty much every attack in the game. So as long as players pick up on that, we don't need to deceive the player base with ambiguous gold flashes anymore. I think that's a pretty good idea. And because that's a pretty good idea, they are going 1 step past that to something that is much, much, much worse. Based on what I've been told, every time you press perfect assist on a gold flash move, it will automatically choose the defensive assist regardless of team order. This is a fantastic relief for players who were sick and tired of trying to cycle through their assists and getting the ones they didn't wanted. That's great news. If you are a player who actually uses the agents with evasive assists, this is awful. This is fundamentally bad design, period. I will keep this brief, but basically that would mean there are just some bosses where you can't evasive assist. All of their attacks are melee attacks, so if you pick a team with 2 defensive assist agents, the game will just prioritize them, so you'll never evasive assist. Well, you can, but you'll have to jump through hoops just to do the thing that the game has trained you to do for the past 2 years, and that you've been doing perfectly fine up until then. And frankly, that's bad design. Changing the system to actually show the difference between the 2 is great. Changing the system to deprioritize evasive assists is incredibly stupid. Julian and Billy like their evasive assists. There's no need to make them weaker than they already are. But again, that last change is only a change in the beta. It might release, it might not release. If it does happen, I will be persistent in voicing my dissatisfaction that they are unnecessarily making Evasive Assists worse for everyone. And it's somehow the monkey's paw effect for buffing Rena and making people remember that her Evasive Assist is simply not good. If it does happen, the pinned comment will contain updates. And finally, that wraps up my discussion for Evasive Assist. Went on a bit of a tangent at the end, but that's fine. I enjoy Zenless, and this series is a thinly veiled excuse to talk about it. In the end, I would guess most players dislike Evasive Assists because they think the game does not reward them. I dislike Evasive Assists because I recognize the game, at a fundamental level, over-rewards them. We are not the same. I know I briefly mentioned it, but I would not be surprised if the devs created a few months of evasive-focused fights in the future. Kinda like Aftershocks and Ether Veils, content designed around a flavor of gameplay before moving on to the next flavor. So if that comes around, I know it may not be the perfect gameplay that you had envisioned, but there's no need to be all defensive about it. Instead of being so evasive, as long as we assist one another, I'm sure we can counter whatever the game may throw at us. You can subscribe if you feel like it, so you can follow up on this video, but you don't have to. Leaving a like and sharing this around helps even more. I have merch that I think is pretty cool and is priced low, just in case shipping costs an arm and a leg. I would never buy overpriced merch, and I don't want you to either. Finally, if you would like to become a sponsor of the channel for only $2, it really does help. I greatly appreciate all my sponsors. Shoutouts to my super sponsors, Caligula138, I Love My PC, I'm Peth, Jam Jalopy, Superbro64, and Tactail-like. Thank y'all so much. Thank you again for joining me on this journey through the odd parts of Zenless. My name's Yojimbo Blade, and I hope y'all have a blessed day. See you soon.